Hey, it's Sarah. Real talk? How long has Start a Podcast been on your list? If you've been running your business for at least a few years and you keep thinking about podcasting but never actually do it, I've got something for you. I'm hosting for the very first time Podcast Launch Prep Week, December 8th through 12th. 5 days where we'll map out your strategy, plan 6 months of your content, and lock in your actual podcast launch date. No more someday. It's $99 fully credited toward your launch package. And we're capping it at just 50 people so everyone gets real support in a group environment. Right now, you can join the interest list at podfoxmedia.com and you'll get early access when cart opens. Turn your later into a launch date. See you there. Welcome to Big Brave Business. This is the podcast where we answer big questions reshaping entrepreneurship. I'm Sarah K. Heeter, and this is Season 3. Each week, I'm bringing on my friends, mentors, and some of the best thought leaders I know. We dive into bold, values-driven conversations about leadership, equity, ethics, and building businesses that actually make a difference. Ready to do business better? Let's dive in. Welcome back to Big Brave Business. We've talked in some recent episodes about building big businesses and doing small business in a big way. And part of that is going to come back to sales. Now, we've talked about sales a little bit on this podcast before, and we've talked about pricing a little bit on this podcast before, but today we're going to be talking about selling high ticket items and selling high ticket offers, products, services, whatever it is. This is something that we all come up against as we're building businesses. So how do we do it? Do we do it? How do we do it well, etc.? But before we open up the floor for discussion of the big question, let me give you an introduction to the voices you are hearing on the podcast today. In case you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Sarah. I am the host of this podcast. And I also run a podcast production and strategic consultation company called Podfox Media.
I'm Joanna Horton McPherson. I am an executive coach for women and social entrepreneurs becoming speakers.
I'm Melissa Esmeralda, founder of MEO Marketing Group. I'm a copywriter and funnel optimization strategist.
I'm Bea Victoria Albina. I'm a functional medicine nurse practitioner by training, and I'm a somatic and nervous system life coach for women overcoming codependent, perfectionist, and people-pleasing habits.
A lot going on there. I'm sure, I feel like this is one of those things that's so funny about hosting a podcast is when people choose to introduce themselves, there's always things they say that I'm like, oh, I want to know more about that. But we are here for a purpose. We are here to dig into a big question. So I'm not going to get distracted by your interesting bios. You cannot distract me. If you want to know more about the people on this call and what they do, by the way, their full bio and all the links to connect with all of us are in the description or the show notes of the episode. So please come connect with us. We want to know you. But today's big question is, how can entrepreneurs sell high ticket offers with integrity and avoid manipulative sales tactics?
I really like this question because I think we've all, as entrepreneurs, have seen the shift of buyer cycles being a little bit different now, things being a little bit longer. And I absolutely understand the idea of thinking like, oh, somebody goes to my sales page, they're going to buy right away. That would be awesome if that was the case for everybody. But it's not happening as often right now. And that's completely okay. That's why I think it's so important to have multiple touch points. If someone needs to have maybe more than one discovery call or sales call with you, I think that's completely okay. People have different buying habits, can be for different seasons in life, but also generally the more expensive something is, then there's a little bit more pushback. So if your copy is really on point and is answering those objections, and then by the time of say you do have like an application for a high ticket program and they meet with you for like 20 minutes, hopefully your sales page has done a lot of that work for you already, and the emails that they've been receiving if you're launching, for example. So then when they see you in person, they're like, oh, wow, this is Sarah. She's really cool. And it feels a lot easier rather than just kind of like booking something that's high ticket and like feeling like a little bit like buyer's remorse because there's a little bit less of a connection. So the human connection will always be really, really important, no matter if it's a fast buyer cycle or a slower one, for example.
For me, selling high ticket with integrity is all about really bringing a feminist framework and a feminist lens. So it means not convincing. Consent is absolutely everything. It means not bringing in high pressure and not trying to twist anybody's arm. Instead, offering high commitment, high support, high transformation, and teaching. In my case, I lean heavily on science, psychology, the nervous system. I really speak to the science and speak to what is really going on in our lives and help the potential client to see what the cost of investing and the cost of not investing is, but in a really plain, direct, simple way versus I think we've all heard that, like, have you thought about the cost of not investing? Like, forget about that kind of stuff, right? Like, what's not working and what could work better. And so the integrity comes from me in the honesty, the directness, and really having respect for my potential clients' autonomy. And if they want to work with me, they can. And if they don't, who am I to convince them otherwise, right? That's my point of view.
I love this question, Sarah, because even in how we frame questions, we have a set of suppositions, right? So my mind goes to, yay, cat. That is literally where my mind went with the cat coming through. My mind goes to the money paying a costly amount of money for coaching, having some exploitative tone to it is fascinating to me. I'm starting there because I work with people who are going on an upward climb in their career, because speaking tends to be a challenge to their presence in their business, their focus on their message. Melissa touched on copy. It's all about messaging, aligning with what your business really does versus what you think it does. Because when you get on stage, it's all tested in the individual. And what kind of Bea was talking about, the power of that transformation, is you're really bringing people through something that is changing their life. When you're saying, come through this, there is an important way to line them up, though. I would say, I would go back to Melissa's point about the buyer cycle. No one wants to dive into the deep end unless the water feels safe. And this is a trusted, tested, known, to some extent, experience. So I work a lot with private clients, and I'm in the process of scaling 2 groups. And there is a challenge in that translation, because my private clients know me and they have bought in and they have paid that price. And so now it's like, how do you monetize to the masses who haven't tasted what the experience is of overcoming stage fright, or even like educating them? They have it. So then you kind of have to stretch out what the funnel is to really give people an experience of you that leads them to the next step of that transformation.
This is so interesting because, Melissa, you kicked us off, right, with really tangible, tactical, like, hey, here's some things you can do to sell high ticket with integrity and avoid manipulation. And I thought that was so interesting, because so many of the conversations on Big Brave Business are so much more like, we don't get into the tactical stuff sometimes, and we almost have to prompt, like, okay, but what does that look like? Okay, but what do we do about that? And I've gotten feedback from listeners at times, a particular listener at times, that says, like, okay, you opened this whole can of worms. I'm with you. I feel passionately about this. You've given me a lot to think about. It's changed the way I think. It's changed my whole perspective. But then what? Like, then what do I do? And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the messy part of being big and brave, right? Is that sometimes we don't have the answers, but I have tried to, since getting that feedback, include some like tactical things. So to kick off the conversation with, like, here's some tactical things, I thought was such an interesting and unique way to approach some of these how these conversations have gone. I love you for just going straight to, like, I mean, this is my answer. This is how. And then Bea, of course, you gave me, like, in particular, I just am hung on this word convince, because I think so many people, when they're first dipping their toes into growing their business, or either starting their business or scaling their business, the convincing part, when sales hurts, right? When our revenue line hurts, when we need money, the convincing part feels like it's supposed to be part of it. And that's such a, like, mind fuck of, it's actually what if we gave ourselves permission to remove the convincing part from the situation? And instead there's invitation and there's connection and there's honesty and there's transparency. And if you're focused on that, like, the convincing isn't necessary. And that is so beautiful. And then Joanna, you came in with business school. And I hear you saying, like, this has been studied. Doing sales is not a thing that we kind of arbitrarily make up based on how we feel and this and that. Like, there's science. Like, we've literally studied, there are terms, there's a process, there are systems. Like this is an established thing. Business has been around for a really long time. You did not use those words. But the terminology that you use, I can so tell is like coming from Joanna literally went to business school, and most of us have not, right? So most of us running businesses did not go to business school. And I think it's interesting to kind of hear these sort of different perspectives come together in tying this bow on what does sales look like. It's interesting to me. So yes, also Joanna, too, there are some assumptions already in the question. And I think that one of the big things that I kind of want to like start with towards the beginning of this conversation is, when we say high ticket, what assumption are we all making that are currently the voices on this in this conversation? What does high ticket mean to you? And it's okay if our answers are different. But when you hear high ticket, what are the assumptions you're making?
It depends on your audience, because what's high ticket to one audience isn't to another. So we just need to be honest about that. I think my price is high ticket for some. My private clients, I'm just going to give you numbers, pay from $6,000 to $10,000 for a journey of becoming a speaker. That price is a range because it depends on how it's packaged, and it depends on what the deliverable is for the person and how deep we're going. And I think that I do want to get to the part of integrity, because I'm possessed by the morality. Sarah, you do this in all of your work, which is why I so love being on your podcast, because that's who you are. And you magnetize people who want to talk about morality in business. It's pretty unique. You were having those conversations. We've got to model what money can do. And someone's got to start. So we have a lot of coaches undervaluing ourselves. We have even more, a lot of people in our audience, in our buyer's market, undervaluing themselves. And then you have women who statistically invest less in themselves. We invest first in our family, our community, the people we help. There's a whole personality profile around this. The touch points is part of it. That's a sales strategy. We create connection and value. And then the investment feels like, I need this journey in myself. This is a journey that is available and a path available. And listen, people will pay for what they value. You see all the time, like I can't pay for your coaching program. I'm going on this Disney cruise, or I'm paying for this Ticketmaster ticket. Like, it doesn't matter. There's absolutely no judgment around that. We design our lives the way we design them, but people will pay for what they value. How you become valuable to somebody is the question.
Yeah, I'm curious. Yes. And I do want definitely to emphasize the more on the integrity piece. And I think that I can dip my toe into part of the reason why I wanted to even bring this up is because as I started learning more about kind of terms people use, especially in online business, especially as a service provider, high ticket has grown for me. And this is exactly your point. Like, what high ticket means to me personally has grown. What used to feel high ticket to me, thankfully, no longer feels high ticket. That is a great indicator of my own personal financial situation. And I'm really grateful for that. I definitely spend a lot of time in gratitude. And there's also an understanding of, depending on who I'm talking to, what is going to feel high ticket to the person that I'm speaking with. And also understanding that there is not necessarily a morality attached to whether or not it's high ticket. Like, whether or not it's high ticket to the person I'm speaking to does not inherently mean it's good or bad. That's definitely also part of it for me. But what's interesting is when I first started hearing people use this terminology online of like, if you're selling high ticket, or if you want to scale, then you should do high ticket, or you shouldn't do high ticket, or whatever. Everybody has opinions. But I think that what's interesting is, my first question when I first started hearing people having these conversations was, well, what qualifies as high ticket? Because I think for my own offers, the launch typically costs more than the ongoing monthly services because the launch includes all the setup and everything like that, right? It's got like one-time things and then the ongoing monthly fee. But then am I looking at each on like monthly fee, or if to calculate how high ticket my offer is, am I looking at what they would spend in a year? Am I looking at what, like, I mean, that's totally different because Joanna, I was interested that you shared your pricing when you just gave your response of individual clients paying typically between $6,000 to $10,000. And I was thinking, okay, yeah, I could see that for what I know about you. And like, okay, what's interesting is I certainly know people who are service providers who their services are $50,000 packages or they're $100,000 packages, and it could be anything from it's a full marketing suite to it's a mastermind to it's individual coaching, and who even knows what's even included in those services until you've already paid and you're already in it and there's zero refunds and you also can't leave a bad review, right? Like there's all kinds of things out there. High ticket, I think, varies also depending on the offer, because what is high ticket coaching? We're talking 5+ figures, right? Like if we're talking high ticket coaching, we're not talking $1,000. But if you're talking an ebook, then $1,000 is like a really high ticket ebook. If we're talking digital course, $50 is not high ticket. No matter who you are, a $50 digital course is not a high ticket offer, right? But like 1,000 might be, 4,000 might be, 6,000 might be, and those are all course prices that actually definitely exist. And so I think kind of understanding the framework for like what even is high ticket, and then also how do you ethically price what your offer is. Somebody posed a question to me recently, like I said I would never spend 5 figures on coaching again. I kind of said it flippantly, and I've done it in the past, but I kind of said I would never do that again for coaching, just coaching. And they kind of said to me, like, would it ever be ethical for someone to charge 5 figures for coaching? And if so, what would it need to look like and who would it need to be for? And it did kind of like start to get my wheels turning about what is my answer about that. I have such strong feelings about the coaching industry, and we have talked about this on this podcast before, but like, so coaching particularly is what comes up for me, because I think that tends to be when people decide to add a high ticket offer to their life, it involves an element of coaching, right? Like that is, and for me too, right? Like for my business too, there's strategic consulting, there's coaching involved that spikes that price because you're paying for my expertise. You can just hire a podcast editor from anywhere in the world. That's not what you're getting when you work with me. And I'm sure you all can relate.
Yeah, I really like a lot of what you guys are saying. And I think it's so important to take into consideration not just the level of awareness that your audience has, but also where they are in their business. Someone who's in year one of their business, they might not have the level of awareness might not be solution aware. They're probably problem aware, which is still a good place to be, like if you are targeting somebody. So if you're pricing something at $1,000, $2,000, might feel like a little bit of a stretch to them, but it's going to feel a lot better than the same offer or a similar offer for $5,000, $7,000, $9,000 when they're like a little bit further along to their business. So I think that's one big thing to take into consideration. I personally don't believe in high ticket, like very, very high ticket, like close to 5 figures for when someone's brand new for something like a course, because at that point you don't know what you don't know yet. So it's a lot to invest in when you haven't really had the chance to like really see what you can do on your own. But if you're making, say, like a couple $100,000 a year and you're paying $10,000, $15,000 for a mastermind, that makes a lot more sense. Like you've had a successful business for a little bit, but like I think there's definitely a big gap for newer entrepreneurs that they're kind of being bombarded. Because like I went through this by these very successful entrepreneurs, and I always think, well, why am I not making 6 figures in 6 months? And I know like some of them like are honest about how they got there. Like they had a lot of experience, they had a big budget for ads, etc. But when that's all you see when you're brand new, it can be really discouraging. So it is really important to find the right people to look up to and invest in someone like that who has been in your shoes probably a little bit more recently and has an offer that is still what they would probably consider high ticket, but doesn't feel so out of reach, but still provides a lot of value. Because for me personally, high ticket is something that, yeah, it's going to cost at least a couple $1,000s, but I expect a pretty big tangible transformation, whether it's ROI or like a mindset shift or something along those lines. Not something that I would easily be able to do by myself, or if I tried to Google it, for example.
I don't think there's a number, to your point, Sarah, that is inherently unethical, right? People want to pay what they want to pay, right? Some people want to buy designer handbags, right? It doesn't mean that the price is inherently unethical. What makes a pricing structure unethical is when there's a power imbalance that's exploited, when there's manipulation, like false urgency, hidden fees, when you're told you need to do like an add-on or something, and that upsell like sounds like a necessity, like it's not going to work without it, but you weren't told up front. What definitely makes pricing unethical is when it targets sensitive communities, marginalized folks in crisis, when it offers some kind of transformation or some change point that sort of portends a massive change in your life, but without clarity, without consent, without honesty about what you can expect. That's what I think makes pricing unethical and out of integrity, not whether it's $1 or $1 million. Right? Because that's so variable. And so that's so individually driven. I don't think we can put a number on it when we're talking about integrity and values.
When I think about integrity, to your point, Bea, I really do think about inclusion and who's represented in my client base and who I want to be representing. And I do sometimes struggle with the pricing because I have a commitment to, for my ideal client, at the right fit, right time, not letting price be a barrier. I do commit to that and I do follow through on that. Part of my work in this really strange angle where I'm like, I only work with established and ethical entrepreneurs whose voices I'm amplifying, because that's part of my mission, right? Is that they want to help the world. That's a very specific space. And then how do I lower the barrier and give them the value that is my time and my expertise and the hundreds of thousands of dollars I've invested in my life to get to this point where I can offer this. So there's just such a balance in that. And I do view it as an art. Like you have to create the rules in a framework to know when to break them. And, I know this is your next podcast topic, Sarah, breaking rules. So I'm going to cue you up for the next one, everybody. But it is true. You've got to know your boundaries and know your lane to know when you need to turn out of your lane to keep your integrity in your practice and in your business. And so as much as I'm like, yeah, I'm a high ticket person, my prices go up over time. All of us do as we expand our base and we get more known in our field and all these things. But that can't let your mission drift. Tail does not wag the dog. And that is a commitment that has to be there for that integrity piece to come in, is why am I doing this?
Yeah. It's such a vital point for us to all keep at the forefront of our minds, because if we're out of alignment with our mission, what are we even doing? Right? Like, do you know how much money I could be making shooting Botox right now? Do you know what I mean? But I do the work I do because I believe in it so deeply. No diss to Botox, you do you. But I'm just saying, I got a call from a recruiter this morning. I was like, oh, wow, that's an option. But it's not aligned with why I'm here on this planet. And to your point, Joanna, at minimum of 20% of everything I offer, from my $37 offering to my almost $11,000 offering, a full 20% is scholarship. I say scholarship, but it's usually pretty much free because it has to be, right? Because who's at the table? So there are ways to have high ticket offerings that really do allow for greater access, for greater diversity, and to include people who would have absolutely no way to pay a $10,000, $11,000 investment. I'll also add payment plans. We were talking about this the other day, Sarah, of really doing all those seemingly small things. So I offer payment plans for everything, including the $37 offerings, with no additional fees. It's $37 or $10,000 if you pay in one fell swoop, or 5. And I think there's those little things that not only uphold accessibility, but help people to see that accessibility really matters, not in a like, give me a cookie visibility way, but in a like, hey, human person who cannot afford this, I love you. And so I've thought about it, the minutia, and that payment plan fees are really, it's a regressive tax, and I'm not here for it.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the human connection and the trust, which is always important. But it is really nice when you see those options available, because like we've all seen sales pages for something that, whether it's high ticket or not, that you're just not quite clear what it does, and you're not sure how much it costs, or the pricing is like purposely confusing, and there's really, it doesn't seem to be very much of an option to have a payment plan or to have an additional conversation with the person. So like things like that go a really long way, because you never really know when someone's ready to buy. Maybe they really like you and they just want to save up, or they didn't even know that you have a payment plan option. Like having those things available is a really powerful way to help with the trust building, which is always going to go so much farther, rather than like, you're not going to make your income goal if like you don't work with me right now type of thing, which I'm sure we have all probably seen too.
That really is an important point, though, is that our job is to nurture connection with our audience, because people will get the value at the level they're ready for. And you just got to trust your audience, right? Like if they're interested in you and you are the medicine for their ailment, they're going to tune in and they're going to seek you out and they're going to click on your newsletter. And those touch points are real, because we do need to warm up to being ready for what you have, and the right time, and the mental blocks not being there around like, is this the right time where I'm going to invest in this, and can I make use of it, and what's coming up in my calendar? And there's just so many things, everyone's story we just don't know. But to stay true to our commitment to keep planting seeds, providing the free, my content strategy for my team is just, it's almost completely education, just to like have them experience what I do. And I actually just got off a marketing call and learned the importance of what you said, Melissa, problem aware versus solution aware. I almost exclusively speak to people who are not only solution aware, but are ready. And I'm missing so much of my audience who don't even know that they're avoiding the stage or even might have stage fright. So we're really pivoting to go at a much gentler pace, because I love what I do, and we're all good at what we do, which is why we know the value behind it. But I can't bring people to purchase point when they don't know me and they don't really know what they can expect, and they're not ready. I told someone, a client yesterday told me, "You're scary," and I was like, "What?" And I'm writing a book called Brave as Hell, but I didn't think that being brave to encounter those fears about stage and how to really touch doubt so you can transform it, all that stuff, is scary for people. I mean, I had no idea. So the high ticket value, that I love the title. I do too. The high ticket value has to be the inner sanctum, like the most sacred part of our practice, right? Like I want to give it away on the first go. But that's like when you meet someone at a cocktail party and being like, let's get married. They're like, what? So the high ticket piece, it's like, let's not hammer on that. Hammer on, like, don't hammer, just like sprinkle those seeds and let them experience what you're talking about. And then they lead up to wanting to get and know why they need you at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been so interesting for me and I've only, but also, wow, I can't believe it's been this long, been in business for 5.5 years at the time of recording this. So it'll be 6 when this comes out. But one of the things that's been interesting to me about this experience is how much we get to make up. And so we get to decide what we're offering and how the offer is structured. And of course, pricing, which we touched on. And we did do a whole pricing episode Bea was mentioning a couple weeks back. So if you missed that one, go back and check it out. But yeah, we get to make up everything. And so I'm curious, when you know that the offer that you've put together is quote unquote high ticket. So whatever that means for you and your business, it's not an ebook. And by the way, I want to also mention, since we talked about accessibility, when I said a $50 ebook is not a high ticket item or whatever example I gave, let me make it clear too that I didn't say that meaning that everybody has $50 to spend on an ebook. There are lots and lots of $50 purchases I have not purchased, right? I'm not assuming everybody has $50 to spend on everybody else's ebook. My point is that that is not what I would consider a high ticket investment. Not that everybody has $50 of expendable income to spend on an ebook. I don't mean that. So just to clarify, and none of you made that assumption, but I realized as the conversation continued to go from there, and I was like, "Ooh, I hope that didn't land wrong for someone listening who's like, I definitely can't spend $50 on an ebook right now." I just want to make sure that that's clear. There are lots and lots of $50 purchases. I have not been in a position I felt comfortable making that as a priority, right? Okay. So anyway, with that being said, when you determine that what you've put together is an offer, this is your high ticket offer, a signature offer, a big offer, right? Whatever that looks like for you. And you get to make it up, and it gets to be whatever the heck you want it to be. And you get to price it however you think is appropriate and ethical and like a good match for the market and your audience and all that. Then how do you ensure that that offer is going to provide value and genuine service? Like, how do you, what are some things that you do personally in your own businesses to follow through on someone's high ticket, quote unquote, investment in you and in your service?
I do a lot of asking my clients. So it comes back to really using a feminist framework of consent and feedback. And so asking pretty continuously, hey, do y'all want more sessions? Do you want more of this? Do you need more of that? We're offering this on Wednesdays and only 5 people are coming. Would you rather it looked like something else? And just really being in a dialogue with my clients versus a top-down hierarchical structure in which I know what they need more than they know what they want and need. And so in that process, my program changes constantly because first of all, because clients are telling me different things all the time, and because it changes to meet each cohort. And the folks who joined in 2019 and 2021 are different than the folks that joined last week. And so really meeting them where they're at, while then it's a different conversation, but also having good boundaries and limits for myself and my team, because like we can only do so much, but really doing everything we can to take care of them in a way that makes sense for everyone and has a lot of touch points.
I ensure quality because it is personal. It's this point I'm trying to build a business that I can be away from. But it's my IP. The true influence method is what I created, and I still run it. So my next step is to train people to do it and maintain that level of every client has a very different personalized experience depending on what they show up with. Because there is a diversity of medicine in the method of how you show up on stage, but not everyone has the same thing. We all have a couple of them. Doesn't matter who you are. We all have a few things. So in a good coaching, valuable experience, someone like us listens and really understands what's at work and not just hearing what people say, but what they're not saying. So you can see a lot by what people don't say and don't talk about and what they want to emphasize here. So you're really reading their subconscious with them. And we can't see ourselves accurately because we operate in the conscious mind, but a good coach can see what's going on behind and help bring things forward and online to optimize for their goals. It's so personal, and I do personalize everything. So the struggle is articulating the value to people. So that's part of the content and education is how does this work? The value of emotion, you're understanding your emotions. Huge area of opportunity in coaching that is not talked about enough. That is the direct line to the subconscious. Direct line. So that's my area of specialty. But you said follow through, Sarah, or I wrote down follow through. But I think what journey. I like to reverse engineer. So I ask a client on the second part of this, how do you give the value? Where are we going? because they're often inner conflicts. They say, I'm going here, but they're actually behaving according to their limiting beliefs that they can't see, and they're heading over here. And so our job is to just bring things to their awareness. Like, hey, did you know this is what I'm hearing you say? Oh, okay. So let's work on that. You reverse engineer. So we say, where are we heading? Then you get this crystal clear picture, and you're reversing back into time what we need to do to get there. That's the follow through, is just staying committed to backward mapping the outcome that they came to get.
Yeah, I really like that. I really love what you guys are saying. And similar to Bea, I don't have a group program. I have some low ticket offers, but like I work with my high ticket offers, it's all one-on-one. So I try to be as proactive as I can and just do the research calls, create the funnel map, create the brief, talk to the clients, customize the onboarding questionnaire. But at the same time, I'm still telling them, okay, this is what I recommend for what I'm seeing, but you're the one in this business. So if I am missing something, just let me know and I can adjust, because it's just like not right to say like, yeah, this is what I see, this is what we're going to do, and you have no say in anything type of thing. So like really asking for their feedback and cooperation, because it's a collaboration and it's not just writing the copy or just looking at the analytics. Like they have to be on board with the strategy, make sure that they're okay with everything moving forward and implementing like essays on the back end and stuff like that, and really working hard to have continuous conversations with their audience, you never really have to guess, and making sure that the current messaging that you have is resonating with people, because they see, oh, okay, there is a lot of value in this, but I'm not being persuaded too hard, if that makes sense, because that's why like the sweet spot is generally problem aware, solution aware ish area, depending where someone is, because you never want to have to like list out a bunch of things that they could get from working with you, because to me that feels like you're convincing them, which is not where you want to be. So that's why it's so important to have conversations with clients, people who also didn't buy into your program, because sometimes it could be, well, I just didn't think module 2 had a lot of information, I think I already know that stuff, when actually it's really valuable, but you wouldn't have known that because we're very close to our offer. So having the additional insight to be able to optimize that can make a big difference, having all the additional support, because it's so important for people to feel like they're being taken care of, especially when it's a high ticket program, because they usually involve some face time with you, and for them just to feel really, oh, I'm so happy that I invested in Sarah, because now I know what it's like working with her. I've done saved so much time. I'm able to do what I love doing, for example, rather than if you're not communicating with them and that's not clear, then that's where the relationship might not be as great. That's why it's so important to be really proactive in your strategy and your communication, because we don't know what clients are thinking, but it's still good to check in with them every once in a while, just say like, hey, just an update. This is what I'm currently working on. This is how this email performed, for example.
One thing I'd love to add, Sarah, if I may, is making sure that our own nervous systems are regulated and that we are in presence, in right relationship with ourselves and our clients. So my focus is supporting human socialized as women to overcome codependent, perfectionist, and people-pleasing habits using a combination of mindset and somatics. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner. And so from my training and experience, I've seen so many business owners get into such a codependent relationship with their clients and potential clients. And so how do we know we're providing what our client needs? Everything we've said about feedback and working backwards, et cetera, but also checking ourselves. Right? Are we also overperforming? Are we also trying to win their love? Are we making it personal? Are we making it about our own worth, our own safety, our own belonging? Are our nervous systems wildly dysregulated while we're coaching, while we're creating, while we're writing? And are we overdoing it in an attempt to win that love to the point where we're overwhelming our clients? So are we underwhelming? Are we overwhelming? For me, the answer is usually when I can come back into regulation and can really ground and step back into a really solid presence, I can feel in my body which way I'm going. But without that framework, I think we're just throwing darts at the dart thing. God, I'm so bad at euphemisms in English, but that thing, we're doing that.
Yeah, that's such
darts
a
at the spaghetti board.
Yeah. I love that example. Like I've never heard anybody present it that way before, but there are definitely instances where that happened. I think especially like if you're newer to entrepreneurship or maybe you just quit your job, it's very easy to tie your worth to how much money you're making or how happy your clients are. And it takes some time to separate yourself, because a lot of us are solopreneurs, or we start off as solopreneurs, so we're the face of our brand. So like, who are we without our business? And it's like almost like an identity crisis. And it just takes time to work through all of that, to be able to work with clients in a way where you're really helping them. But at the same time, you're not taking everything personally, because most of the time in business, things aren't personal. Sometimes maybe they just didn't work with you because someone was, you're maybe just out of their range for their budget or something like that. It has nothing to do with you as a person.
The program I put together 10 years ago was a hot mess of too much data. It was so much, but I knew so much and I had so much privilege and I really wanted to help them. And so I wanted to give them everything I've ever heard and everything I've ever learned. And I've got so many degrees and I just want them to know all of it. And I love them and I hope they'll love me. And so now, a decade later, and a lot of study of adult learning pedagogy, I give folks like about a third of what they got a decade ago. And the results are outstanding compared, and they stay with me longer, right? Because they can mature and evolve versus try to not freaking drown in my way too much, also unparsed, unedited education, right? So it's a quadruple edged sword, I think, is really what it is.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated about this, and this is definitely like a little bit of a pivot from where the conversation started. But I think what is so funny is the things that have come up on this conversation just speak like so directly to my soul. And one thing I've always struggled with at work, even before I started my business, is, and I mean, I struggled with this as a kid. When you think about like friendship, speaking of like wanting people to love you, if people are nice to me, in my mind, I classify us as friends. Like we are now friends. And it has been a hard learned lesson over and over and over that who I think of as a friend does not necessarily think of me as a friend, just because we have had nice interactions. And that has carried into business where the line between client and friendship can get really blurry, especially when you're providing one-on-one service, especially when you're working very closely together, especially in like a high ticket environment where what you're providing is it's bringing up all the stuff. Like we say on this podcast all the time, that entrepreneurship shines a floodlight on all of your shit, right? And so not only is all of my stuff coming up and I talk about it on a podcast because why not? It's like 2025 therapy adjacent. So anyways, but also for my clients, as they're using podcasting for business, their stuff is all coming up. And the longer we work together and the deeper we work together and the more closely we work together, the more and more of their stuff I get let into and get to be a part of. And that is a level of intimacy that is typically reserved for like very close friends. So then being able to differentiate who's a friend and who's a client, and like, can they be both? When is like, is it unethical to be both? How do you balance being both? And then if you do allow both in your life, which I do, not all of my clients would necessarily classify me as a friend, but some of my clients definitely would. And so, and some of my clients were friends before they were clients. They're not suddenly not friends anymore. And then that line's really fuzzy. But when that happens, yeah, there's things that are really hard to not take personally. Like, I mean, trying to tell yourself like it's business, it's not personal, doesn't, I actually don't even live by that, because to me, business is personal. Everything I do is personal. And that's one of the things that I think sets entrepreneurship and small business apart from like a 9 to 5 and or a corporation, is that we get to be personal. We get to put humans first. We get to put relationships first. We get to take care of the whole person in ourselves and in our clients. We also sometimes have to make decisions, either us or our clients, that because there is a personal connection that is developed, is tricky to manage. So anyways, that's all coming up for me in this conversation. And I think it's just an interesting kind of ethical dynamic that comes up specifically with high ticket offers because of the depth and the intimacy in working together.
I think it's easy for us to over-identify with our businesses. And this is not my first go around, so I've had the benefit of a lot of time where I have over-identified with my businesses in the past. My new goal in this version of my business is to sell it. So I have to make it not mine. So it's a really interesting place to be like, what I do is very personal because it's connection. But here's the amazing thing about having a team. And I heard you talk about this, Bea, to train them in how to be personal too, because we all want to. It feels good to have boundaried, positive, grounded, protected interactions based in like truth and positivity and being healthy and all of that. Teaching that is personal. So you can retain the personal touch in a business, but not be the nerve center of your business and feel all of the things. And so with me, the client, Sarah, it's interesting. I had someone ask me if she could have coffee with me. And this has happened more than once with a client. And I've just come to the point where I don't pretend to have the answer for everybody, but I think we can be friends, but not at the same time that I am your coach. That's just my strategy because it keeps the lines cleaner for me to deliver the value. And then you're not like texting, being like, are we friends? Like, which hat are we wearing? It's just cleaner for me. And I do a lot of trades actually in professional services, but somehow that is clean because we're trading like this is this vase, like the arteries and the veins, like send and receive, like you can do that. But when you mix friendship in, friendship ideally doesn't have conditions. Like you're loving them. That's why you want a quality relationship. That's love. That's a friendship. I love my clients in a way, but there's a container, there's a purpose, there's a time, there's a goal, and that is not the same as friendship. So to be liked, to be loved and validated, like I love all of those things, but I don't park that for me in my clients. I park it now in my numbers of like, how's my business performing? Because I am a grown ass woman and I get to like make my business be profitable, and that thrive. I now understand the connection between serving others, income, and like a healthy business cycle. And it doesn't have to involve my nervous system, to your point, Bea, but it is totally a practice. I love that you brought it to being regulated, because entrepreneurs by habit, I think, we do over-identify, and our job is to stay boundaried and really grounded. And I like to put it in life design. Like your business should live inside of your life, has multiple dimensions, and not be living your life inside your business, because that model is a model for suffering.
Yeah, it's burnout central, huh?
Been there, done that. Done.
Yep.
Next.
100%.
I feel like a lot of kind of ethical, I guess, questions, boundaries, explorations, etc. I feel like we've tackled a lot of things outside of just sales when it comes to like just a high integrity high ticket offer. And that is really, really interesting to me, and not necessarily where I expected the conversation to go. I love that about these, that it gets to be kind of organic and real and authentic, and like what really does come up for us in this particular group of people. And I think that's also one of the really beautiful things about a group conversation. So first and foremost, thank you so much to each of you who showed up and like went there with me on this today, and also to you listening, thank you for being on this journey with us as well. I'd love to hear, and I know the other people on this call would as well, would love to hear what's coming up for you. What are you thinking? What ethical things, questions, or lessons have you had to learn when it comes to high ticket offer in your business? So just to reiterate, everybody's information is in the show notes, the description of the episode. Thank you all so much for being here. I know that you will all be back, and that some of you have been on already before. So if you want to, again, just to reiterate, to connect with some of these folks, definitely go back into the previous episodes. You can hear more from several of us, obviously me, like 2.5 years of me. And also you can connect with all of us on whatever social media platforms we hang out on, websites, whatever. But we would love to connect with you. And just, yeah, thank you to the three of you who are here live. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me and being willing to get big and brave in business. And also to you listening, thank you so much for being here. And we'll see you next week. Hey, it's Sarah. Real talk. How long has Start a Podcast been on your list?
If you've been running your business for at least a few years and you keep thinking about podcasting, but never actually do it, I've got something for you. I'm hosting for the very first time Podcast Launch Prep Week, December 8th through 12th. 5 days where we'll map out your strategy, plan 6 months of your content, and lock in your actual podcast launch date. No more someday. It's $99 fully credited toward your launch package. And we're capping it at just 50 people so everyone gets real support in a group environment. Right now, you can join the interest list at podfoxmedia.com and you'll get early access when cart opens. Turn your later into a launch date. See you there.